Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Tonna Barthet, the CEO of Kyocera Document Solutions UK and Ireland, in the studio. How are we doing, Rod?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Yes. I'm actually looking forward to this because you are the first guest I've had in. There's two actually reasons I've got you in. You're the first guest I've had in from who's currently working in the document management solutions space, and also Steve in marketing is in the background. So we've actually got Steve here in the studio, which is great. You're the first marketing person, just in case you say anything wrong, so we can edit it. Rod, I want to kick off with your career, because normally when I look at someone's background, I normally go on LinkedIn, have a little scour around and decide what they decided to do with their career. And I looked at your background, and you went to Wimbledon College, but you did the Institute of Marketing and also a finance diploma.
Banking,
or something like that. So tell me about your choices. Take me right back.
Okay, well, I'm still trying to become a fast jet pilot, so I haven't actually found the career for me yet, right? So, I often wonder how I ended up doing the role that I'm doing, because it's one of these careers, I think, that over the years has kind of moved from one to another. So, as you rightly say, I went to Wimbledon College. I realised I was pretty rubbish academically, so about the age of 17, I decided I want to go and earn some money. I went and got a job in the only thing that my parents would let me do, which is something reasonably reputable. So I joined a bank. I'm not sure that would be deemed to be necessarily the best career choice these days, but it was very, very prestigious at the time. I left and went there. Once I started working, I realised that my learning style was very much doing. So I started work in the bank, and when I was at the bank, I then started my banking exams, right? Because I could relate my learning directly to what I was doing day to day. Stayed there for about 3 years, realised I was never going to earn any decent money in that particular role. It was retail banking. And one of the ladies I was working with, her husband happened to work with a merchant bank that sounded really exciting called Schroeder Leasing. And after a couple of Christmas parties of chatting to him, I went and I got a job with Schroeder Leasing, and my career then went from being a trainee rep through to joining the board of the bank of the leasing business as we went through the 90s. And it was a real, for those of the listeners that here are in the print industry, the late 80s, early 90s, and through all of that was a crazy time in the print market. So I was always very closely associated with the print market. I knew the characters, I got to know the customers, and so on. And then in 2000, we sold the business, and Schroeder's divested into what it is now today, which is a personal banking business, and it sold its investment banking division, of which Schroeder's happened to be one of them. So I found myself then becoming an employee of Siemens, and they asked me to stay on. During that time, I was doing all sorts of roles within the leasing business. So you ask about credit management, and I'd done underwriting, I'd done risk management, I'd also run sales teams, I'd run operations, and my old boss, and I will give him a shout out here because he's one of the people I always recognise my career for, a guy by the name of Jeff Addison, that kind of took me under his wing and took my career from strength to strength. And one of the things he always said to me is, don't ever really just try and focus in one area until you've seen a lot in your life. These were through my 20s and into my 30s. So stayed within Siemens and stayed there for another 7 years. And that was interesting because that took it from a business to, which was hundreds of millions into kind of the billions. So it was a huge balance sheet, working with some super talented people. And but I think, got to 2007, I got tired of the big corporate world, which is a bit funny saying what I'm seeing now. But and so I left and I went and I joined what was then my biggest customer, a company called Anadata. It seemed to be a fast-paced, fast-growing, largest managed print company in the industry at the time, with revenues of about 30 million. Two brothers owned it, Tim and Andrew Harmon, two hugely colourful and talented individuals, taught me an awful lot. And then for the next 8 years, they were on a journey. They just wanted to grow the business. They made a number of acquisitions. I learned a lot from them by moving from the big corporate world into the fast-moving, kind of almost FMCG world of what that is, the office equipment world, hyper-competitive. Many people said, was it a big cultural shock? Not really. The guys were always very honest. We always, we knew what we were heading into. I didn't really find any surprises when I went into the business. And, you and I were just chatting earlier, what I think the guys were very good at. They were enormously entrepreneurial. and they hired brilliant people. I would say that, wouldn't I? But, I'm very proud of the fact that many of the people that I was with back in 08, 9, 10 are still with the business and still with us today. So we then sold the business in 2016 to Kyocera. They were interested in the business because we developed not just a managed print business, but we had quite a strong ICT services business as well, and one of the few that had done a very good job of integrating it into a single company. And when Kyocera bought us, they were really clear that they wanted to be able to leverage that ICT business. The reason that it sold very well was that it wasn't just a print business. It wasn't just about buying a machines in field estate. It was about saying, yeah, we've got an opportunity to be able to expand our own products, but also we want you to help us to expand the ICT services business. And that's the journey that myself and the team have been on since 2016 and through to 2023, where we are today working now very much not just with the print providers, of which that represents half of the Kyocera business. Half of the business is now direct. And within that, about a quarter of it is providing ICT services to either into the channel or into the end users of the Kyocera operation.
What's made you stay in the industry, Rod? Because most people, when they come to me, they don't want to work in the print industry, or they don't want to work in the document management industry. Yeah. What attracted you to just sort of stay into it? Because you mentioned that it was a sort of crazy time in the 80s and 90s, but was it sort of quite Wild West in those days?
80s and 90s, it was mad, right? I mean, there was an awful lot that went on. There was a lot of toxic debt that was created, mostly by the leasing companies at the time, which is why they then all started to fold in on each other and started to have to buy each other. And it's all well documented in that market of what was going on. The reason I'm still here, because it's been constantly evolving. I think, if I'm really honest, when I left the leasing business to join the office equipment, I got bored. I was just financing the same old stuff, and that in the finance industry now, I've seen that massively evolve, and particularly into green assets and other sort of large heavy assets. But the office equipment market has really evolved, and today I don't even really see it as a print business. It's a document solutions and it's a workflow business. And we were talking earlier about the fact that actually I think we're seeing much more need now for collaboration between many of your listeners in the IT services space and the print space, because what used to happen is that print would be sold broadly to the facilities management. We're going back quite a while. And then IT used to take care of broadly A4 printers and the IT services business, the networking and all that sort of good stuff. Whereas now, there aren't two customers. There's one. There's a CIO broadly, or an IT director. And that IT director is now the single point for the entire industry, right? For not just a managed print, but also for the IT services business. And so what I'm seeing, and it's been the heart of the services that we've been building over the last 7 or 8 years, is the need to be able to service the customer with multiple different services. Now, for the print market, I see massive opportunity to help them move on-premise infrastructure into the cloud, right? Very little of that being done, but yet there is a huge drive. You've only got to look at the overall spend of cloud migration to see where the money's being spent, right? You've got, in my view, 3 big buckets of spending customers, which are more than double-digit growth. You've got cloud spend, you've got security spend, and you've got AI spend, right? So if you're a smart provider, whether you're in the IT space or the print space, you need to be moving into that market, because in other markets where you're seeing 1%, 2%, 3% growth, I don't want to be fighting around in that area. As the OEM, we want to be helping our partners to be able to migrate into where the customer is really spending the money. But the important thing, and I think the thing that I think sometimes gets lost, the customer at the heart of this, the CIO of the organization, the people who are worried about cybersecurity, the people that are worried about the fact that, what's the latest stat? 79% of organizations are going to spend more money on print security because they're recognizing that as these devices hang off the network, they're a massive risk unless you're buying the right type of assets and then securing them appropriately, which is why we've put an awful lot of money and spend. We're getting BLI accreditation for our pen testing on the devices and all that sort of good stuff. So we're focusing very heavily on the level of security that sits around the physicality of the print device, but we're also investing massively heavily in the whole workflow piece. And if you look at all the global acquisitions that Kyocera on the document solutions part of the organization has been spending, it's all been about IP relating to workflow. So it's been buying organizations that are document management, document storage, cloud print. So we now own that IP, so that when the customer buys, if you take a step back and says, I'm going to buy a machine that can scan, can print, I want to take a physical piece of paper and I want to turn it into something that I can digitize. Once it's inside, I need to store it. Once I'm storing it, I need to be able to move it around my network. I want my staff to be able to have access to it on their mobile phones, on their various mobile devices. I then need to encapsulate that and make sure it's entirely secure. So you take a step back and say, that's what a customer is really looking to try and do. What are we all doing? We in the last 12 months, as Kyocera Document Solutions UK, our paper usage, our physical print output has dropped by 15%. Wow. 15%. Now that's for a number of reasons, right? We are targeting reduced use because we want to increase digitization in our organization, because I want improved efficiencies. I want to be able to do things faster, quicker. I don't like the fact if I see pieces of paper lying around because it's a security risk. It's all of those facts that then impact on any organization. I want customers to have access to their own information directly, right? We live in a world now, I think we were just mentioning, if the days when I was growing up with my car, you'd go to the post office, you'd take your MOT and your insurance certificate, and you'd get everything. They give you a piece of paper, and you'd put that piece of paper in your windscreen, right? What do we do today? We receive a notification. It's got a 16-digit number on it. It goes in. They're all linked together. They know that I'm insured. They know that I've got an MOT certificate if I need that. And these days now, when I tax it, I just pay the money, and guess what? I don't even need to put a piece of paper in my windscreen. Well, that's happening in every organization. Every business out there is saying, how can I deal with this much faster? How can I improve efficiency? How can I improve competitive advantage for my customers? And that's all about how do we digitize processes. And so everything that we're seeing, and your question was, why am I still here? Because that's an incredibly exciting place to be, right? Because you're working out, how do you do that? I'm fortunate to be representing an organization that is investing very heavily in that evolution of document workspace. That said, I've been on the record often enough. I don't believe in a paperless office. I think we'll always need paper. I think a paperless office, I think someone I once heard say, is as likely as a paperless toilet, right? I think, there will always be a need for paper. If you look at where paper is growing, right? Paper is growing in the production print end, right, of the marketplace. So at the lower end, what we're seeing is we're selling fewer low-end devices, but more higher-end devices. So where people are producing more, they're producing them more through larger devices, and then they're moving those type of devices into more efficient production print environments, which is why Kyocera has evolved and has now produced our own, what we affectionately call Victoria, the Task Alpha 15000C, the first really, in its price point, high-end inkjet production print device. High speed, 300 pages a minute, all that sort of good stuff. But it's using inkjet technology. We're very much at the heart of what we do is all about sustainability, right from manufacturing right the way through to kind of the sales end. We recognise that we're seeing that migration in the print world. We're seeing the migration into much higher end production. So we're manufacturing those devices, and we're using the same inkjet technology now to produce output onto fabric. So at the recent ITMA event in the big global event that was held in Milan this year, we've launched our new product that's removed 99% of the water from the production process to put ink onto material. I mean, that's massive. It's pretty much removed all water in that cycle. So all of the aspects of what we're doing is a combination of recognizing where the market is going. So in the print world, it's about recognizing that we are seeing the migration in the customer to wanting to more talk about the network, and within the network, we need to talk about the workflow. And then it's about, well, what devices and how we evolving the types of devices that we're producing and manufacturing. So that is why I've stayed doing what I'm doing, because I think it's an incredibly exciting, incredibly challenging space, and I see that when I talk to many people in our channels.
Within your industry, I mentioned the word or the term competition. Yeah. People actually collaborating together, because one thing that I am aware of, most MPS or document management salespeople are very good salespeople. They're very proactive and they've got great relationships with their customers. but historically they've been just selling them printers or print solutions, etc. Where do you see the opportunity for sort of partners out there to suddenly think they could partner with a company that's doing IT services or cloud services or Microsoft services? Is there an opportunity, and do you think that will happen, or do you think there's still a bit of a sort of a closed book with these sort of customers? Because they can't do everything.
No, correct.
You can't, but you're right in saying that the CIO wants to sort of, what a single point of relationship, what a single point of failure.
Correct. And I think CIOs, the first thing they're going to be interested in is what's your accreditation? What gives you the right to be able to talk to me? If I'm going to trust my network with you, if I'm going to trust my security of my network with you, you better be good at it, and you better be able to prove to me that you can do it. Can every organization provide all of those services? Absolutely not. But can organizations expand the level of services that they provide without having to make very costly investments that quite often take many years in order to be able to see a return on? Yes, absolutely they can. The issue that I'm seeing is that for IT salespeople, it's very difficult for them to think, oh, I don't want to talk about print. It's a bit low level for me. I don't really interested in that. Don't underestimate it, right? Because it's a very important part of a customer's infrastructure, right? The fact that you have a customer tells me that your customers are printing in the same way that they're running networks and they're running security and they're doing all of those good things. The failing, I think, I see in a lot of the salespeople is that they refuse to try and engage with the customer to understand that. And the best salespeople that I see, either my own sales guys or the sales teams that are in the channel, are those that really understand the customer and really understand what's challenging them. Whether it's we've got real concerns about security, 10% growth in spend around security year on year tells me most organizations are really worried about it. I was reading a statistic only yesterday that 46% of organizations in the last 12 months have experienced some kind of cybersecurity attack, right? That doesn't mean that they've been brought to their knees, but it does mean that they're being attacked and they recognize it. We see that every day in our own organization. If I understand that and you are my customer, my question is, where are your pain points? What's the difficulty that you're having with that? Now, what my job to do as an owner of a managed service provider or owner of a print company is to be able to say, what elements of this do I want to be able to engage with my customers on, right? In print, it's, for me, I think the fastest way to engage is around the cloud and about moving print infrastructure into the cloud. Guess what? Customers are currently spending that money with your IT services providers on-prem. Well, your print provider's pretty much now talking to them about saying, I can get rid of that spend for you, but I'm going to move it into the cloud on my infrastructure, right? You're losing revenues, you're gaining revenues, right? I mentioned to you that we've seen a 15% reduction in print. Great from a sustainability perspective, great for an efficiency improvement. I'm not spending what I was spending on the print output. Guess what? I'm now spending that on the software that I'm deploying or on the services that revolve around the provision of that service. For those pieces. So the spend is to say I'm just moving where I'm spending it. So the collaboration, the corporate, I can't remember the word, the cooperation, God, I said mouthful, but that element of being able to say, look, you are my customer and you trust me, and for these services I partner, but I'll look after you. Yeah. We are seeing more and more of that, particularly in larger organizations that are saying, do you know what, I don't want to deal with Joe for this and Alex for that and Fred for this and Janet for that. I'll deal with you, right? I'm gonna hold you to account for these services. If you tell me that you work with this partner to be able to deliver those services, I trust you. And that's the role of the salesperson. And we were also talking about, the difficulty that many people have in cross-training their salespeople. You will not cross-train a network-capable salesperson to sell print any more than you'll cross-train a print salesperson to sell a sophisticated unified communication solution. But what you can train them on is understanding the relationship with the customer. The one thing that has always kept me really energized in this marketplace is the incredibly strong relationships, particularly in the print market, that they have with their customers. And there is a fundamental difference between the IT market and the print market. I've always felt the print market is predicated very similarly to the vehicle market, right? Pretty much everything that's sold has a finance attachment. Very low finance attachment in the print market. If I have a finance attachment to you, I'm old enough to remember renting a television, right? And it used to be £2 a week. And guess what? For £3 a week, I can have colour, right? when I'm talking to the customer all the time, and it's all about the annuity income and the annuity spend of the customer, and I can do more and be flexible around the infrastructure that the customer needs, because I can flex the service charges that are being provided to the customer, however you build that, I'm going to have a very proactive relationship with the customer. If I have no finance attachment, I have a much less homogenous conversation with the customer all the time around what they're spending, right? And then you're in danger of that conversation simply becoming commoditized. I was spending 10, I now want to spend 9, right? Instead of, what can I continue to get for 10, right? Can I get more for my 10 rather than I just want the same and I just want to get it for 9 or 8? So that to me is the difference. And I think there is real synergies now because of the concentric nature of the fact that we're seeing a centralization of ownership of the network within the customer, that I think organizations have got to collaborate. I think the future of business is, and I'm seeing increased consolidation in the market where organizations fail to be able to do this. They kind of reach the end of the road. The product set of what they're providing is commoditized and is increasingly becoming commoditized. And no, I don't want to go and spend several millions of pounds to go and employ some very expensive people to add into my services that might take 3 years before I see sensible revenues coming out of it. But I can do it really quickly. I can do it really quickly if I've got a really good relationship with a managed partner that I can trust, that I can say, I can do this and I'm going to service it through this partner. But it all comes back to the same thing, in the same way that the customer needs to trust you. So you need to be able to trust the collaboration that's occurring between you and the partner. And so the business owners have got a lot to do, I think, in terms of really building those collaborative partnerships.
Who do you think should be more worried? Is it the print resellers or the IT resellers? Now, I'll give you a bit of background to that, because I remember 2 or 3 years ago, I looked in the top 100 VARs in the UK, and Zerotech, who you know, wasn't in them, but they were doing enough revenue to be in them. And I thought, well, why aren't they in the top 100 VARs? And I think it was at the time they weren't recognised as an IT reseller. Now they're trying to move into that space a bit more, and they're doing lots of great deals in security. Yeah, and I think he has, and now they're in that. But I do sort of see that, who's got more of a problem? Is it the IT resellers not recognising that print's a threat and they could take their lunch? Or is the print resellers thinking, actually, my customers at one point are going to suddenly think, I could go down to Softcat and they could outsource to another print reseller and the relationship's gone? So
yeah, look, I think scale obviously is, there's, I think the largest print providers outside the manufacturers are 50-60 million, whereas you've got the the £1 billion type IT services, but they're very different types of businesses. One I think in many regards is very, very intimate. I think we've never really seen in the UK, if you go to the States, you can find print resellers that are $500 million. The UK, the largest that we've ever had was a few hundred million. That then changed quite dramatically when it was acquired and so on. And now the largest players in the marketplace are 50, 60, 70 million pounds, right? And there's a very few number of those.
Why is that?
I think there's a scale issue when you get to a certain point in the print market, because you are physically fixing stuff, right? The market is working really hard, and we're contributing to assisting with that through creating a much more modular approach to our service provision on the devices, making them much more reliable, doing all of that sort of good stuff. But if you're going to have a machine base of 30, 40,000 machines out in the marketplace, you need a lot of engineers to go and visit those customers, right? So there's a scale issue, and for those, you've got to supply stock, you've got to get parts to people on time. We've got boot stock going into our engineers. We've literally got, we use products like Buybox, for example, where engineers can pick up parts. You've got to be very clever about the way in which you move the assets around so that you can service those parts. If I'm a print reseller, do I want to invest in that? Is that quite difficult? I think we've seen some try to buy them, right, and not very successfully. So is there a risk between one or the other? I think ultimately there is a risk to both, right? Because I keep coming back to the point, we have now a single customer, and it's the customer that will choose where they want to put their services. What I've seen in the IT space broadly is a commoditization of print. They think that it's just about simply saying we can supply these machines at this price with this margin on it. Yet in the print space, they don't just sell printers, they sell a managed service around that print infrastructure. And that's a very different proposition to selling a box that's actually going to spit out X number of pages every month. And that's where the print proposition and the print market really understands and gets that. I don't necessarily think that the IT space does, any more than I think overly that the print providers really understand what's involved in managing a customer at a proper IT managed services provision. They're very different. But we've got a single point of contact. We've got a single point of contact that wants to have fewer partners, but more capable partners and partners with greater breadth. And that breadth is not just by I need to know that I've got the depth of that I can go and work with other partners in order to be able to deliver the services that I need.
Do you see the future of the market being that, where one person will own the relationship and they will outsource it to the partners who can deliver the service?
I think we're seeing that today. I think definitely. I mean, we're seeing that with our direct sales teams, some very, very big household names that we are providing 8, 9, 10 different types of services,
really?
Which we own the customer. They come to us and they hold us absolutely to account. And we're not alone with that. I know many of our partners are also doing the same thing. And, that's everything from supplying the paper to providing zebra printers to providing IT services on site, right? And some of that we're partnering with, some of it we've invested in and we're providing it directly ourselves. So we're already seeing that, and we're already seeing those customers then saying, I've got a problem over here, can you take it over for us? Sometimes we're saying, do you know what, we're not a cleaning contractor, I can't do that for you. And we did have that. We had a customer whose cleaning contractor went bust, and the first people that they reached out to was my sales guys, because they knew that they could normally lean on them on things. Now, to be fair, we looked at it and said, that's not what we do, right? But it told me a lot about the relationship that one holds with the customer, that the first port of call is, can you help us? Can you do that? And that's the grail. That's the chase. That's where salespeople should really be pushing the envelope with their customers and really pushing and challenging. The trouble is, most salespeople, myself included, I don't like talking about stuff I don't really know anything about. So naturally, people will shy away from a conversation. If I know nothing about networking, right? Am I really going to want to engage when you start talking to me about your network? Probably not. But if I've got an ability to know that I understand you're talking about networking, you know that I don't know about networking because we have that relationship, but you do know you can rely on me to bring the right people in to come in and talk to you about that. That's the element that salespeople have really got to get their heads around, that you've got to be able to act much more as a facilitator for your customer rather than I just want to execute on a particular transaction.
I'm interested, Rod, in how you train your salespeople, because you mentioned something at lunch and it stuck with me around, you might not take a call from a salesperson if you're thinking, well, he's trying to sell me something I'm not really in the mood to be sold to. But if I'm a customer that I'm engaging with on a regular basis, if I've got an annuity contract with them or rolling monthly revenue, I'm more likely to have a proper relationship, so I'm to take the call. How do you engage with your salespeople, and how do you get them to train to get that, so they get that relationship, so you will take their call and their customers will?
Do you know, I'm going to start at a really basic level, right? I'm a firm advocate. We haven't got onto this subject yet, but collaboration and in-person is so important, right? We were very early into the hybrid working environment. So we very quickly, when we came back, I never bought this, everyone's going to work from home, right? I desperately, when we had this conversation and Steve had said, are we going to have this conversation? The first thing is, I've got no interest in doing this on Teams. I just want to do this. We're going to do this. Let's do it face to face. So the first thing is making sure that you've got a sales force that is readily able to get in front of its customers, because only then can you build the relationship. Right, we've all experienced it. You get onto a Teams call, within 2 minutes you're talking about work, right? Sometimes it's quite painful when you've got 7 or 8 people on a call and no one's saying anything, right? You're then talking about work, and at the end of it, you're off and then you're going and doing something else. I don't know about you. I don't know about your family. I don't know about your kids. I don't know about what you're really interested in. I don't know what football team you're into. All of that stuff that us oldies really enjoy, right? And actually, having, 2 relatively young kids, 26 and 29, they enjoy it as well, right? So point number 1, get in front of the customer and build a relationship. Once you've built that relationship, then you can talk to the customer about pretty much anything. And when the customer and you know where your boundaries are about your levels of expertise on what subjects, I very rarely will have a conversation with a customer and get into a technical conversation about them. But I certainly know the people that I will bring in order to do that. And my customer knows that I will bring those people in. But importantly, I will only bring those people into the dialogue that I know, that I could trust, that I know will look after the customer well, and that the customer will know that actually we've got a degree of competence around that. Some of that is me bringing in other people within the organisation. Some of it is I pick the phone up to one of our trusted partners and I say, can you come in, and I've got an opportunity over here that I want to talk about. Now, I'm going to contract with you, Mr. Customer. So I've got revenue this side. You will be a subcontractor, Mr. Partner. And those relationships are really important that they are two-way. So I'm providing opportunities to that partner as well as them coming in to fulfill opportunities that I'm going to give. Because I've seen things really fail on that part as well. Relationships stop. It's like any relationship, isn't it? They pretty quickly stop when it becomes one way. If I've got a partner where I'm just simply bringing them in for my opportunities, my question is, why aren't you talking about my services to your customers? Right? And the partners that I want to work with are those where we will see reciprocal dialogue going on. And those are the best kind of levels of partnership that I see occurring. They do happen, they're just not happening enough. And I think they need to happen much more. And I think, if there is something for your audience to be thinking about, is how do we develop those and who do we develop those with?
How do you like to develop your relationships for? So if someone wanted to have a relationship with you, so they cold call you, are you responding to that, or how do you get a relationship? Because they're not calling up and saying, "Oh, Rod, what football team do you support?" Well, so how do they get engaged with you?
Okay, well, let me make a first plea.
don't be, I'm giving your mobile out. Don't worry.
Plea on LinkedIn, right? Someone sends. I'm quite an open bloke, right? So someone sends me a request. They say, "I'd like to chat to you on LinkedIn," and I say, "Yeah, okay, fine." Then the next thing I know is I get a massive pitch. And I don't think I'm alone in this, right? And when I get a pitch about HR services or about marketing services, I'm thinking, if you're half as good, why are you looking up the work and doing some work here and realising I've got a marketing director? Contact him about marketing. Contact my HR director about the HR bit. You want to talk about this sales bit. So you need to find out about me, right? And I don't think any of us are any different, right? Relationships are born when you're interested in me, I'm interested in you. We're having conversations and you find areas of mutuality that actually, do you know what? We happen to support the same football teams, or actually you support X, I support Y. But that in itself creates a dialogue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, how do we build relationships? You use referrals. I see people terribly doing that. They just don't do it. They have a brilliant relationship with a contact at a customer who leaves. And the first thing they do is they say to, I can't believe it, Janet's left, right? Ah, right, okay. 3 weeks, a month later, have you contacted Janet, who's gone over to this company over here? No, I haven't. Why wouldn't you just pick up and do the easiest cold calling and phoning your contacts? If you have a relationship with people, you're going to be able to do it.
Why don't people do that?
Do you know what? Because they just don't think about it. What they do is they focus on the customer and where they're trying to make some money and try to do some selling, right? The biggest thing that switches me off personally is when someone's trying to sell to me. The only time I want to talk to someone who wants to sell something to me is when I want to buy that thing that they happen to be selling. So I get the point about, I'm going to contact you because it might be at that point, right? But actually build the relationship, invest some time, right? Understand what my cycles are, understand when I'm going to want to buy. The last thing I want is the car salesman that contacts me once every few years because my finance agreement is coming to an end and hasn't bothered to contact me during the course of the term, that says, how's it all going? Right? Are you loving the car? Anything I can help you with? Right? The best relationship I had was when I was driving a BMW, and then once a year, the guy used to phone me up and said, how do you fancy I take you to the BMW Wentworth Open, right? And I sort you out a couple of tickets for you and your son. Fantastic, right? Guess who I contact and guess who I receive the call from the next time he picks the phone up? How you doing? What's all happening? Did your boy enjoy the golf? We had a brilliant time, thank you. Those relationships are what really drive things. And I think the moment it becomes transactional, not really interested. And I think we become, and I think COVID has had a lot to do with this. I think the people working from home have had an awful lot to do with this, because everything then just moves to a transactional basis. And if that happens, guess what? You take any value out of the conversation, out of the relationship, and out of the value of a transaction, and out of your margin.
Fair enough. Kyocera's global underlying philosophy is do what is the right next as a human being. I guess that leads nicely into the current sustainability debate. So I had a couple of questions for you around that. On that philosophy, what does sustainability mean to you, Rod?
Okay, well, so our philosophy is do what's right as a human being, right? And that really predicates everything we do. That filters all its way through to the customer, to our employees, and to the products that we make. What does sustainability mean to me? I get quite frustrated. You know, we heard the head of the UN only last week talking about we're now moving to global boiling, no longer global warming. We are not going to sort this out unless we all as individuals fundamentally change some of the things that we do. I'm a great avid listener to a podcast called The Rest is Politics with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. And Rory Stewart, I know, is a passionate campaigner for sustainability, right? Talks a lot about protection of the green belt, right? And yet every time I listen to his podcast, he's in a different part of the world, right? We can't continue to travel the way that we travel. We can't continue to be able to do all the same things that we've done and continue to consume the same things that we've done on the basis that we think that actually we just need to hope that things are going to get better. So for me, sustainability is about what are we going to do that's going to be different, right? I'm fortunate I have the means to be able to put solar panels on my house at home, right? That wasn't just about reducing my energy bill. That was about reducing the energy that I'm using and trying to create that myself. I drive a hybrid vehicle, right? So that's important to me. You know, the team at work think I'm absolutely bonkers. I came back from a trip to one of my colleagues in Germany, and I came back saying, I want bees. I want bees, and we've put bees. And we've now got 2 hives on the top of our headquarters. We started off with 30,000 bees. We've now got over 100,000, and we've just harvested 65 pounds of honey. That's all about the biodiversity of the area that surrounds us, right? So there's lots of things that we can do. We had a coffee conversation with the marketing team, didn't we, recently, where we just said, what is it that we can all do that would just be a bit different, that will make a difference, right? One of the guys says, in one of our offices in Hemel Hempstead, we don't recycle anything. Now, when I go to our headquarters in Reading, we got recycle bins everywhere, right? So he worked out that our recycle bin was round the corner, nobody knew where it was. Now, so we said, okay, well, let's put a couple of signs up. Let's move the bins. Let's make the waste bin that is non-recyclable round the corner, so you've got to go and find it, and put the recycle bin right in the front of everybody, right? We now are recycling 90% of the waste that is coming out of that office. Very, very small changes that makes a difference. And I worry because I think the impact of what individuals are doing won't make a difference, but there's 8.5 billion of us on the planet. And if all of us, okay, now not all of us are in a fortunate position to be in a high wealth nation and all of that sort of stuff, but if enough of us make enough of a change, and that does mean making some sacrifices. I think, you know, I'm on the record. I don't think offsetting is a strategy in itself. I think it's a journey to help whilst you continue to reduce your output. So we offset loads of stuff, right? So and we've become a carbon neutral company, right? And we beat our targets by 28 years and all of these great things. We're offsetting, right? Now, for me, offsetting is not just the answer. I don't sit on our laurels and say, great, we're now carbon neutral because we're offsetting and we're planting loads of trees and all the rest of it. It's a journey whilst we can produce less and we can reduce the amount of plastic packaging. So we're working really hard as a manufacturing company to use much more paper-based packaging or card packaging rather than plastics, right? So how can we massively reduce? Now, I really applaud the government for its plastic packaging tax and the way it's trying to encourage organisations to think more about using more sustainable products and more sustainable ancillaries around their products to be able to reduce its footprint. So for me, sustainability is how do we do less? I think offsetting is a strategy for a journey whilst you produce less, whilst we focus on the fact that we've produced 15% less paper. I'm really proud of that. And, you know, we will continue to try and push the boundaries on more things that we can do less of whilst continuing to grow. So that's sustainability to me. And
is there any sort of initiatives that you are either doing at Kyocera or you'd recommend to businesses to become more sustainable, or what could we do or should we be doing to help make a difference?
I think the first thing is you've got to have the debate. You've got to start asking yourself, what can we do? Different organisations need to do different things. But here's the thing, it's becoming far more important at a commercial level. So whereas in the past it was almost a nice thing to do, we all remember our King Charles, where we all thought he was nuts 30 years ago because he was talking about sustainability, right? And I remember seeing him on the TV and we're all saying, he was well ahead of his time. Whereas our customers, the tenders that our suppliers and our customers are now submitting and our suppliers are responding to, that we respond to, pretty much all of them, if I look at the public sector, very heavy levels of weighting is now given to sustainability, right? And not just sustainability, but the whole corporate social responsibility aspect of what we as organisations are doing. So I think it's about having the conversation in the organisation, a bit like our coffee morning, where we literally just sat around a table and said, what could we do? How do we just at an individual level do more? There's things that we recommend. I think I mentioned to you, I know my responsibility is UK and Ireland, but I'm also on the board of our European operations, which gives us a great voice with regards to what we need at a European level from our Japanese manufacturer to help us to fulfill more localized efficiencies. We're looking at now far more recycling of things like toners and so on, and rebuilding that and keeping that more local and reducing the footprint that we have in terms of the delivery locations of elements of our supply chain. So it's really about making sure that you're having the right conversations internally to say, how can we do it? It's got to start there. But I also think the leaders of these organisations have to believe in it. You can't pay lip service to this. And as with so many things, whether it's, I'm really passionate about wanting people back in the office, back in front of our customers, to build relationships, to build collaboration, ultimately to serve our customers better. I'm very passionate about sustainability. I'm very passionate about mental health and all of those good things. You need if you are in a privileged position to be in a leadership role, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're the CEO. You can be a leader in any organisation at any level. You just have to be passionate about it, and you need to want to see things happen, and then you've got to make things happen.
This has been well debated, but I am going to pick up on what you said there about you're keen to get staff back in front of customers and dealing with the customers, etc. And then you mentioned about passionate about mental health. Those two things can sometimes collide. I.e., you might have staff there saying, I don't really want to go back in the office. I can't go and see customers. I need to go to yoga on Fridays because it's affecting my mental health. Yeah. How are you managing that internally? How do you manage it at Kyocera? So if you have a candidate that's coming there saying, do you know what, I've got X, Y, Z, or I need to do X, Y, Z, I can't see customers. Yep. How do you manage it internally? Is there an answer to that?
Do you know what? I think this is a massive experiment that is happening globally, everywhere, right? I think the first thing I want to say is the world has got a whole lot more complex, right? Whether it's in people's personal lives, we're dealing with cost of living crisis, we're dealing with more complexity in the workplace, we're dealing with more compliance in everything that we do. You've only got to go and try and open a bank account these days to realise the kind of things that happen to everybody at a personal level. What do? I think we want a workplace that people want to come into. I want a culture that people want to be part of. We work really hard at one of the things I'm really proud of is when I see new people into the organisation, and our employee engagement survey recently bore this out, friendly, want to help, want to be able to kind of contribute, has come out very strongly, because that's fundamentally what we believe in. We're not the right place for every employee, right? For an employee that says, do you know what, I just want to work from home, we're probably not the right place for you. Why? Because we want to collaborate, because we want to build a relationship with our customers. I want people to be in the office next to each other so that they can help the customer, because you've got the answer to something that I'm trying to deal with, right? But also I need to be able to make sure I can give you the right levels of flexibility. Now we have a policy that says you get up to 2 days a week to be able to work from home, and that I think is enormously helpful, right? I think the old days of the only reason I know that you're working is because I can see you in the office, I think they're long, in my view. I think they're long gone, right? I employ you and I pay you, right? I trust you, therefore, right? Because if I don't, I shouldn't be employing you and I shouldn't be paying you. But it's a reciprocal arrangement. And I think when I talk to other business leaders, quite often mindsets, I think, get moved by a very small minority of people that abuse that trust, right? And it happens on both sides. Sometimes the employer abuses the trust and sometimes the employee abuses the trust. But broadly, you've got a workforce that want to do a good job. You've got customers that want to be satisfied, and you've got managers in organisations and leaders in organisations that want to have a highly motivated workforce. Trying to do that remotely is really difficult. And here's the rub. If I've heard lots of people reference this, but if you want a career, get in the office, and if you want a job, stay at home, right? And if you stay at home and you're invisible, other than just the output of what you do, right? Very easy to be replaced, right? It's also very easy for the employee. So for some people, that's absolutely what they want to do, right? So it's about, we did the work in conjunction with The Economist called the magnetic workplace. And for me, that was very much about being able to say, look, do you know what? You've got to create environments that people want to be magnetized to. They want to come in. That means some real basic stuff. Make sure people can park, right? So we developed our own parking application, right? So that people can work out, can I get into the office? Can I get my car parked? Have I got a desk, right? So it's real basics. We lay on brilliant coffee. We happen to have a reciprocal relationship. We do good business with a customer. They supply incredible coffee, right? And we put them in all of our offices, right? And to the extent that I don't stop off at Costa or Starbucks anymore because I'm going to get an equally good cup of coffee when I get into the office. That's that kind of physicality of it. I want to have nice environments when people turn up, like you have here. But at the same time, when I come in, I want to contribute. I want to add to the atmosphere. I want to be able to engage with people. And I think the argument that I've heard in the past is very much, I want to work at home without realizing what I give when I go into the office. What do I contribute? So we need to help educate people to that, right? This isn't just one way. And if you want the flexibility, you get the flexibility. But, we talk about mental health. We have over 20 fully trained mental health aiders, first aiders in the organisation. We have facilities with third parties where confidentially they can phone if they have challenges, because we recognise now there's very little distinction between people's work and home lives. And you therefore need to, quite often when you see somebody that's really struggling in the workplace, quite often it's not actually to do with work, it might be something else. But if you don't have a relationship with that individual, you'll never understand it. So I know it keeps coming back to it, but it's about building that relationship, and it's about building a culture where people want to have that relationship.
The managed print industry is predicted to have global revenues to reach 392 billion by 2027, which when my marketing team told me that, I was quite honestly, I was flabbergasted. It's huge. So what do you feel is the main opportunities for Kyocera, and what new technology have you got in the pipeline? Where's it for you? Where's the opportunity?
Okay, well, really big, we're now full circle back to kind of what we're talking about with the customer. And I think, yes, that print piece is actually quite big, but you're in trillions when you start talking about AI, security, networking, all of those sorts of good things. The real opportunity is to be able to build the ability to be able to provide other services that are associated, in this instance, with print. So that's all about workflow. That's all about security around print. That's all about migration into the cloud, all of those good things. And then at the other level, you're talking about moving into the technologies. So the technologies for us, so we've got three core strategic elements, which is traditional office print. I come back to the point. We won't have a paperless office. We'll have a less paper office. We'll have a less machine office. That will be overlaid by the fact that customers need to store more. They need to make sure that what they're storing is highly protected and is highly secure, and then it's got access to it and can actually undertake the workflow. So our investments are around improving the product. We have a world-class, first-class manufactured product in our printing machines, right? And scanning machines, and now linking that with the ability to digitize the physical paper, to be able to store it, secure it, and then be able to workflow it, and then be able to turn a digitized piece of paper into a physical piece of paper back again. That's where all of our investment is going in the document solutions piece, very much around that element and the network of the customer. On the print side of it, we're all about making the products far, far more secure, far more sustainable in terms of the recycling. We've always been a leader in that particular part of the business. And then also recognizing that we're seeing this massive move to, particularly at the production end, into inks, which are far more sustainable, and into the higher end production. And those ink technologies is not just about the print onto paper, but it's also about the print onto other media. And we're evolving. We will be launching towards the end of the end of this year, beginning of next year, a next iteration of our current Victoria device, which globally has been a huge success. Customers have really adopted that move, and the quality capacity built by our colleagues in Japan to be able to produce a toner quality output, but using ink at far less energy output. So one of our inkjet production devices uses 70% less energy than a comparable toner device. It's 70% less energy. So forget the sustainability message on that for a minute. Just look, particularly in an increasing cost as we've seen around energy, just look at it from a financial perspective. So you kind of get that classic convergence then of I'm financially far better off, and I'm using a much more sustainable product. What's not to like?
Mm. You've already mentioned around the three big sectors was cloud, then security and AI. Over the past few months, we've really started seeing the adoption of AI into our everyday lives. How should we be embracing AI, and how can it help or potentially hinder the IT channel?
I think there's a lot talked about in the AI world, but I guess I don't like the fact that the only thing I really hear being talked about AI is the Terminator type terrible world that we're all going to have. I went to see the latest Mission Impossible the other day, which is all about kind of AI trying to kill the human race and all that sort of stuff, right, and control it. I think there are for sure the need to know what we're doing around it, but the opportunity for machine learning, to me, if you change the reference of artificial intelligence to machine learning, I think you have a completely different concept of what we're really trying to do. We have the capacity for technology to be able to consume and analyze vast amounts of data in a nanosecond and feed it to us to be able to then make judgments, right? That, I think, is where opportunity lies. We're already using some AI technology within our own print devices that can recognize certain elements of when you scan devices and it can recognize where things are and move things around and so on. I think the opportunity at that level is to embed more machine learning into the devices that we are producing. I think at an organizational level, I think there is an opportunity for employees to develop their own skill sets. We have a security desk where we are managing lots and lots of data coming through on behalf of our customers on their endpoints, and we're using AI in order to be able to do the analysis of what's a real risk, what's not quite a risk, feeding it to the individual and saying, is that really a risk, right? So I think, to me, it's about what can we use machine learning for in order to be able to massively improve. And I think those people that try and stand in the way of that, I think, are a little bit King Canutish, because this is something now, the genie is out of the bottle, right? Absolutely, the genie's out of the bottle on this stuff. And we are, without doubt now, we now need to say, yes, there is a risk. And I think we are right to highlight those risks. But I equally feel that there is a much bigger opportunity. And I think this is the next iteration. The last time we saw this was the invention of the internet, right? And let's face it, the first kind of e-commerce that occurred around the internet was pizza, right? With people using it instead of fax. Now look at what we do every day. Try and fast forward. I always try and remind people that the smartphones that we rely on every day didn't really exist before 2007.
Which is frightening, actually.
Which is incredible, right? Something that was going to release us all from our desks and all the rest of it, I think has tied us much more to it, has made us slaves to what's going on and so on. We've got to be much more, I think, circumspect and thoughtful about how do we really want to use it. But I think there is massive opportunity. And if I try and fast forward 10 years and look back, we'll be talking about technologies and things that we have not even begun to think about today that will be prevalent and will be in our day-to-day lives in 10 years' time.
Rod, in 10 years' time, I'm going to be interviewing a robot, and you'll be
possibly.
You'll be made redundant. Yeah. You won't have a job.
Very. You know what? I think, Marc, I think people worry about that. Yeah. You will, right? People will. They'll have different jobs. What was it I saw the other day? I saw Netflix advertising for an AI specialist on $700,000 a year, right? Yeah. Wow, right? if anyone out there who wants to learn about AI, go and learn about AI, right? Because you'll find yourself, and I love the Amazon advert that I'm watching at the moment with the guy that's buying loads of stuff. He's a security officer that buys chef stuff, and before he knows it, he's walking past a shop that says chef wanted, he goes and apply for it. That's what's happening, right? In the same way that we don't employ typists anymore, do we? Right? I remember, when I was a little boy, I remember going into my dad's office and there was a bank of typists, all female, right? All sitting there, bashing away on typewriters. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Because guess what? We all type ourselves every day. We do it on keyboards. We do it on, right? So actually, all we're saying here is we're going to see a migration of skills and we're going to see a move into different skills. And I think that, for me, is the bit that if you just try and hang on to old technology and to old industries, then you'll be made redundant, right? Because those won't exist. It's actually, how do I now start to reskill and relook at things? And that I think is what frightens people, because it's about the new. And so it's always about what's out there. Yet we all use smartphones, don't we? Even my 90-year-old dad has got 3 laptops and a smartphone and an iPad, right? And he uses all of them. Right, so that I think is all about the education piece and about the wanting to be able to learn and be able to evolve.
Everyone I speak to when they come on the show, they talk about building a managed services business or recurring revenue, etc. That's the holy grail for everyone wants to do. Now, there are many ways to build a managed service business, but what are the pitfalls and the benefits of going down the route of either collaborating, partnering, instead of acquiring or adopting a managed service area in your own business? What's the challenges you need to look out for?
Well, I think it's the investment. If you want to do it organically, it's really hard, right? If you think of a managed print provider, they've been driving recurring revenues for decades, right? Because you take a machine and you charge on a per click basis. What we're talking about now is a different type of recurring revenue. So I think you need to do one of potentially 3 things. You either need to partner and take a margin off the annuity revenue we come through. You need to be able to build it yourself, very expensive, and you need some very patient shareholders, because it does take time to build those revenues, and you've got to put a lot of investment in, and you've got to have a lot of people in order to be able to have the skill sets in order to be able to provide those. I do think any managed service business really is predicated broadly around 3 elements. You've got the recurring revenue, you've got the professional services, and then you've got the hardware. All right, and each one of those attracts different levels of gross margin, right? So it's about getting that balance right. So I think about saying, what recurring revenues do I want to provide? I see a lot of people say, we want to do IT. What IT? If you try and talk to a CIO and say, I want to supply your IT services, take your pick. What part? Do you want to talk about my network? Do you want to talk about my security? Do you want to talk, what element of my IT do you want to? Then when you're doing that, what's your accreditation? What Microsoft accreditation capabilities have you got? What Apple accreditations have you got? Well, you've got to then be an expert in those areas, or coming back to what we mentioned before, you have to be able to partner with the right people that have those accreditations, because it's those accreditations that demonstrate you can trust me. All right, you don't have to worry. We're managing it. We've got it. So that's I think the element of, right, so what do you want to do if you want to go and build a managed service business? The great thing is, I think there's a lot of IT vendors out there that are building their managed service. I think they're missing a trick when they're not talking about print. There's a lot of print companies out there that are very quickly evolving into trying to provide other IT managed services. Some of them are trying to do it organically. Some are saying, do you know what, I can't do this, and they're selling. Some of them are collaborating and they're starting to work much more. I don't think there's enough of that going on. And I think the industry has got a lot that it can actually do to accelerate that, but it just needs to get on with it.
Rod, we have a closing tradition on this podcast. You'll be glad to know the interrogation is over. But the closing tradition is that you'd recommend a guest that the channel chat listeners would like to hear from. So is anyone that's maybe either inspired you, or you've worked with in your career, or you've admired from afar, you think, do you know what, they could share their wisdom? Yeah,
do you know what? This isn't industry related. I was privileged to be introduced to a book a while ago, written by a former colour sergeant, Brian Wood, his name is, who wrote an incredible book about his time as a soldier in Afghanistan in the early 2000s, which he went through something pretty horrific. It's been televised. The BBC made a programme called Danny Boy. The book's called Double Crossed. And the story really isn't about the bravery that he demonstrated that got him a military cross. The story is about the resilience and what he went through when he was then accused of killing lots of innocent people that actually weren't insurgents. And it's that story that goes through. Anyway, my daughter gave me the book to read. I messaged him on LinkedIn, not expecting to, not LinkedIn, on Instagram, not expecting, just to say, read the book, think it was brilliant. And I don't suppose you'd like to come and chat to us at a conference, would you? And to my surprise, about 2 minutes later, I get a reply back saying, yeah, we're really happy to have a chat. I met the most incredible, driven individual. I've been privileged to meet his family, and he what he can share and what he can tell your audience, I think everybody would love to listen to. I think he's an incredibly inspiring individual. I say his name's Brian Wood. If any of your listeners just Google Brian Wood MC, it will take you through to his website. So I think if I was asked who should sit here and who should you chat to, there's loads of stuff online. I would recommend get him on, because I see a lot in our industries that we're contending with. We were talking about Stephen Bartley the other day, and I saw a post that he put up on LinkedIn literally this morning, talking about, there's lots of people in leadership positions that have imposter syndrome, that kind of struggle with their mental health, with, doing all of these things. I mentioned the rest is politics. Alistair Campbell, massive advocate of mental health. He's very publicly talked about the challenges that he has. Brian is someone that has experienced it, has been through it, talks very passionately about it. And I think lots of leaders in your audience would really value having a listen to somebody that's been through things. I'm a massive, my team will know I'm always talking about perspective. When we're finding things tough, I'm not on a battlefield. I'm not jumping out of a car out of the back of a truck with a load of people trying to shoot and kill me, right? We're just trying to run a business, right? So when I'm finding things tough, that's what I tell myself. That's what I tell my kids and the team around us. So I think Brian Wood would be a fantastic guest for you to chat to, and to just really talk about mental resilience and what he's been through and what others can learn from that.
Rod, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time.
I enjoyed it. Okay, thank you.
That's a wrap.